Enough, Adriana.
Enough, Adriana. Tell me, what is your name?
Before we begin, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. I'm really hoping to break through the magical barrier of 1,000 subscribers. That number holds a special significance for me. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click. But for me, it's a huge boost of motivation to create my next video. Thank you in advance. The young millionaire visited his cleaner's humble home, and what he saw made him weep. You are nothing but the garbage that cleans the floors we walk on, and that's how you'll remain until the day you die. Adriana Velez's voice boomed through the marble lobby of the Mendoza Tower, the echo bouncing off the glass like a slap that everyone felt. It was 7:30 in the morning. Over 40 employees froze, coffees halfway to their lips, phones unanswered, steps halted on the gleaming floor. No one was breathing. At the center of that circle of silence stood Valentina Cruz, 26 years old, in an impeccable blue and white uniform, a bucket of water at her feet, and a still damp rag in her hands. She wasn't crying. That's what infuriated Adriana the most. No matter how much she insulted her, how much she trampled her in front of everyone, the girl with emerald green eyes wouldn't shed a single tear. She'd just lower her gaze, purse her lips, and wait for the storm to pass. Are you listening to me, servant? Adriana approached until she was inches from Valentina's face. The expensive perfume was almost dizzying. You've just stained my Italian shoes. Do you know how much these shoes cost? More than you earn in a year. In an entire year of crawling on the floor. I'm very sorry, Miss Velez, Valentina murmured, her voice so soft it was barely audible. She had just mopped, and the floor was still wet. I put up the caution sign. It's right there. You're contradicting me, Adriana shrieked, her face contorting. You, a starving cleaner, dare to contradict me. She raised her hand. The gesture was so swift, so brutal, that several employees gasped. The slap never touched Valentina's cheek, but the air her hand cut grazed her skin, and the girl closed her eyes, bracing for the blow that her body already knew from so many other life humiliations. Enough. 2 words, just 2 words, but spoken with an authority that paralyzed the entire lobby more than any shout. Mateo Mendoza was descending the main marble staircase, dressed in a designer black suit that looked as if it had been cut by the hands of a god, his hair slicked back, his dark eyes fixed on the scene like embers. He was 31 years old and the sole heir to the Mendoza Corporation empire. Real estate, construction, luxury hotels in 3 countries. When he entered a room, the very air changed temperature. Adriana immediately lowered her hand, her furious face transforming into a sweet, feigned smile. Darling, it's nothing. This employee soiled my new shoes, the ones you gave me. I was just explaining that she needs to be more careful. Mateo didn't look at her. He descended the last steps without taking his eyes off Valentina, who remained with her head bowed, her hands trembling slightly over the damp rag. Miss, he said, addressing the cleaner with a formality no one expected. What is your name? Valentina raised her gaze for the first time, and when her green eyes met Mateo's, something happened in the young millionaire's chest that he couldn't explain. It was as if the ground shifted a millimeter beneath his feet. Valentina, sir. Valentina Cruz, she replied, her voice, though low, not trembling. Valentina, he repeated, as if savoring the name. You put up the caution sign. Yes, sir, it's there. She nodded towards the small yellow plastic cone, which was indeed placed about 3 meters away, perfectly visible. Mateo slowly turned his head towards Adriana. Her smile began to fade. There is a sign, Adriana. Mateo, please, you're not going to defend a servant in front of... There is a sign. Mateo's voice hardened like steel. She did her job correctly. You walked on a wet floor, ignoring a caution sign that was in plain sight, and then you humiliated her in front of 40 people from my company. The silence of the lobby became so dense, it could be cut with a knife. Adriana opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Seriously? You're going to do this to me for a cleaner? Her voice cracked with a mixture of disbelief and rage. Do you know who you're marrying? I'm Adriana Velez. My family owns half the financial district. I know perfectly well, Mateo replied coldly. And precisely because of that, I expected more from you. He turned towards the employees, who were pretending not to listen while hearing every word. Return to your work. Nothing has happened here that deserves your attention. The people dispersed like a flock of startled birds. Adriana, her cheeks flushed with humiliation, grabbed her designer handbag and stomped furiously towards the revolving door, not before casting a look loaded with pure venom at Valentina, a look that said without words, "This isn't over." Valentina was left alone in the center of the lobby, the bucket at her feet and her heart pounding in her chest. She quickly gathered her things, bending down, wishing she could disappear. "There's no need to rush," Matteo said, approaching. "Take your time." "Thank you, sir, but I have to finish this floor and then go up to the 8th floor to clean the offices before 9, she said, and then stopped. She had said too much. She lowered her gaze again. "Do you work 2 shifts?" Matteo asked, frowning. I just cover some extra hours, sir. It's nothing." She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "With your permission," she said, picking up the bucket and almost running down the corridor, her back straight, her head held high despite everything. And Matteo stood there, in the middle of the gleaming marble, watching as the woman in uniform disappeared around a corner. There was something about her, something that didn't fit. It wasn't just the dignity with which she endured the humiliation. It wasn't just the serene beauty of those green eyes. It was something else, a shadow, an invisible weight she carried on her shoulders, as if bearing an entire world on her back that no one else could see. Matteo Mendoza had been born into luxury, had dined with presidents, signed multi-million-dollar contracts before turning 30. He thought he had seen it all. He thought he knew people just by looking into their eyes. But for the first time in a long time, he felt a burning curiosity within him. Who was Valentina Cruz, really? That same afternoon, while reviewing some documents in his 30th floor office, he couldn't concentrate. Over and over, his mind returned to the morning scene, to those eyes, to that phrase she had let slip unintentionally. And then, what? How many jobs did that girl have? Because such a young woman carried that shadow in her gaze. He called his personal assistant Rosa on the intercom. Rosa, a woman in her 50s who had worked at the company for 2 decades and knew every corner of the building. "Rosa, could you get me the file of an employee from the cleaning department, Valentina Cruz?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Miss Valentina, sir." Rosa's voice sounded soft, almost maternal. "She's one of the hardest working girls we have. She arrives before anyone else and leaves after everyone else. Did something happen?" "No, nothing. Just administrative curiosity." "Send me the file, please." "Right away, sir." 20 minutes later, Rosa entered with a thin folder and placed it on the glass desk. Before leaving, she paused at the door. "Mr. Matteo," she said with some hesitation, "if you'll permit me the boldness, that girl has a heart of gold. I don't know her whole story, but I know she carries a lot. I've seen her eat hard bread during her break to save money. I've seen her go without lunch to send money to I don't know where. Whatever you're thinking of doing, I beg you to be kind to her. She's already suffered enough." And she left, leaving Matteo alone with the folder and a strange knot in his throat. He opened the file. Basic data. Valentina Cruz, 26 years old, originally from a town called San Miguel del Valle, about 4 hours from the city. Single, no completed university studies. Current address, a rented room in one of the poorest areas on the outskirts. But it was a note in the margin from the Human Resources Department that chilled his blood. 3 months ago, Valentina was due a productivity bonus for her exemplary performance, a considerable sum, enough for any employee at her level to celebrate for weeks. And next to the figure, a handwritten observation from the head of personnel. The employee refused the bonus, requesting it be transferred in full to the support fund for medical expenses of another night shift worker. Mr. Joaquin, who has lung problems, insisted on anonymity. Matteo leaned back in his leather chair, letting the folder fall onto the desk. A woman who barely had enough to eat hard bread. A woman humiliated that very morning by his fiancée. A woman who gave away the only extra money she earned to save the life of a colleague she barely knew. Something stirred deep within his chest, in a place that had been dormant for years, frozen under layers and layers of business, contracts, and loneliness, disguised as luxury. He walked to the window and gazed at the city spread out at his feet, millions of lights turning on with the sunset. Somewhere in that immensity, a girl with green eyes was returning home, after a brutal day, carrying a secret that he, for some reason he couldn't comprehend, needed to uncover. "Who are you, Valentina Cruz?" he murmured to the glass. "And why can't I stop thinking about you?" Outside, night was falling over the city. And without knowing it, without even imagining it, Mateo Mendoza had just taken the first step on the journey that would change his life forever. A journey that would take him in a few days down a dirt road to a humble house where the truth awaited to break his heart. But that would come later. For now, there was only one question burning in his mind, refusing to be extinguished. And 4 hours away, in a forgotten village, two elderly people lit a candle because they had no money for light, and prayed for their daughter. For the daughter who sacrificed herself in silence. For the daughter who never told them what she suffered, so they wouldn't suffer. It was 4:30 in the morning, when Valentina Cruz opened her eyes in the darkness of her rented room. No alarm clock rang. Her body hadn't needed one for years. Hunger, habit, and responsibility woke her before any alarm. She lay for a moment staring at the damp-stained ceiling, listening to the drip of the faucet the landlord never fixed, and took a deep breath before getting out of the narrow bed. The room was barely 3 by 3 meters. A bed, a small table with an electric burner, a chair, a makeshift closet with a curtain, and on the wall, the only thing that truly mattered, an old, faded photograph of her parents, Don Esteban and Doña Carmen, embracing in front of their small house in San Miguel del Valle, smiling under the country sun. Valentina touched the photograph with her fingertips, as she did every morning. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, Dad," she whispered. "Today I will fight for you again. Hang on a little longer. Your daughter will not let you down." She made herself a tea from leaves she collected herself to save money, and ate half a piece of bread she had saved from the night before. The other half she carefully wrapped in a napkin and put in her bag. It would be her lunch. Eating twice a day was a luxury she couldn't always afford. The money she earned was divided with mathematical and painful precision. The room, transportation, her mother's medication, her father's medical expenses, and what little was left, if anything, was for her. For her, there was almost never anything left. She stepped out into the dark street and walked 20 minutes to the first bus stop. Taking transportation from closer by would have cost a few more pesos, and those pesos, multiplied by the days of the month, meant medicine, meant food for her parents, meant the difference between Doña Carmen having her heart pills or not. As the bus rumbled through the city's still empty streets, Valentina rested her forehead against the cold window pane and closed her eyes. She remembered, as she did every day, the promise she had made to her mother. "Promise me, my daughter," Doña Carmen had said 3 years ago, her voice weak after her first heart attack. "Promise me you'll get ahead, that you won't give up, no matter what." "I promise, Mom," Valentina had replied, squeezing her mother's bony hand. "And I promise you something else. I'm going to get us out of poverty. I'm going to make sure you live your final years without worrying about a thing, even if I have to work day and night, even if I have to give my life." 3 years later, she was still keeping that promise, with every drop of her sweat. She arrived at the Mendoza Tower at 6 a.m., an hour before any other cleaning staff. She donned the blue and white uniform, tied her hair back, and began the endless routine. The first-floor bathrooms, the marble lobby, the third-floor boardrooms, the eighth-floor offices. She mopped, she dusted, she polished, she collected the trash of people who earned in an hour what she made in a week. She did it all in silence, invisible, like a uniformed ghost no one saw until they needed someone to blame, like that morning the day before. Adriana Velas's humiliation still burned in her memory, but Valentina had learned long ago that the words of cruel people only held the power she gave them, and she refused to grant them that power, to be insulted, to be trampled. As long as her parents had their medicine, she could endure anything. What she didn't expect was that from the 30th floor, dark eyes would watch her with an attention she had never before received. Mateo Mendoza had spent the entire morning inventing excuses to go down to the lower floors. A meeting that could have been a video call, a facility inspection any manager could have done, any pretext to cross paths, even for an instant, with the green-eyed cleaner. And what he saw only perplexed him more and more. He saw her share her single piece of bread with an injured pigeon that had flown in through a window, smiling at the bird as if it were her friend. He saw her stop to help a messenger who had dropped a box of documents, bending down to pick up each paper, even though it would set her back in her work. He saw her, above all, at a moment that broke his heart. It was near noon. Mateo was walking down the 7th-floor corridor when, through the slightly ajar door of a small staff break room, he heard voices. He stopped, hidden in the shadows. Inside was Valentina, kneeling beside an elderly man sitting in a plastic chair. It was Joaquin, the night shift watchman, the same man to whom she had secretly donated her bonus. The man was coughing, a deep, wet cough that shook his entire body. "Don Joaquin, you have to take all your medicine," Valentina was saying with infinite tenderness, holding him a glass of water. "You can't be saving it for later. The doctor said it's every 8 hours, without fail." "It costs so much, my dear," the old man replied in a hoarse voice. "And you've already done too much for me. I don't even know how that money appeared in the fund, but I know it was you. Only you have a heart like that. It was nothing, Don Joaquin. You just focus on getting better. You have grandchildren waiting for you. They need you to be strong." The old man took her hand with his trembling fingers. "God will repay you, girl. Someday God will send you someone to take care of you like you take care of everyone. I feel it here in my chest." Valentina smiled sadly. "I don't need anyone. Don Joaquin. I'm fine like this." But Mateo, hidden behind the door, saw something she would never have confessed aloud. As she stood up to leave, he saw how Valentina subtly placed her hand on her stomach, holding back a wave of dizziness, bracing herself for a second against the doorframe before regaining her composure and continuing on her way. She was hungry. She had gone who knows how many hours without a real meal, and yet she was giving away her time, her money, her energy to others. Mateo retreated before being seen, his heart clenched into a fist. In his entire life, surrounded by powerful, ambitious, calculating people, he had never witnessed anything like it. That woman had nothing, and yet she gave everything. That very afternoon he decided to do something. He called Rosa. "Rosa, tomorrow, without her knowing, I want you to leave a complete pantry in Miss Valentina's locker. Food, fruit, enough for a month, and make it look like a company raffle, something anonymous. I don't want her to know it came from me." Rosa smiled on the other end of the line, a smile he couldn't see but could guess. "It will be a pleasure, sir. Though if you'll permit me to say, that girl is proud. If she suspects it's charity, she'll reject it, just like she rejected the bonus." "I know. That's why it has to look like a stroke of luck, something fate owes her." "As you wish, Mr. Mateo." What neither of them knew was that in another office in the same building, other eyes were also watching Valentina, but not with tenderness, with hatred. Adriana Velez had not forgotten the public humiliation of the previous day, when Mateo, her fiancé, the man with whom she was planning the wedding of the year, had contradicted her in front of 40 employees for defending a starving cleaner. It was a wound she could not forgive, a wound that demanded revenge. From the large window of her father's office, a minority partner of the Mendozas, Adriana watched Valentina cross the lobby with her bucket and rag, her perfect nails digging into her palm. "Enjoy your little moment of glory, servant," she murmured between clenched teeth. "Enjoy that the boss defended you, because I swear on my name I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to make you lose your last peso. I'm going to make Mateo see you for what you are, a nobody who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as us." She took out her phone and dialed a number. "I need you to investigate someone," she said, her voice as cold as ice. "A cleaning employee, Valentina Cruz. I want to know everything, where she comes from, what she's hiding, who she wants. And above all, I want to know what hurts her, because when I know what hurts her, I'll know exactly where to drive the knife." She hung up and smiled, a smile that chilled the blood. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to the storm brewing above her head, Valentina finished her shift. The sun was already setting when she left the tower, exhausted, her feet swollen and her back aching. But before catching the bus back, she did what she did every afternoon. She went into the small payphone booth on the corner. She didn't have money for her own phone, and dialed the number of the only neighbor in San Miguel who had a landline, Doña Lupe, who kindly went to find her parents so they could speak for a few minutes. "Mija, is that you?" Doña Carmen's fragile voice on the other end of the line was like balm to Valentina's tired soul. "Yes, Mom, it's me. How are you? Did you take your pills? And Dad, how is his leg?" "We're fine, my daughter. Don't worry about us. The only thing we're missing is you." "And are you eating well? You sound tired." Valentina closed her eyes and forced the biggest smile of her life, the smile her mother could hear over the phone, even if she couldn't see it. "I'm eating wonderfully, Mom. The company gives us delicious food. Today I had chicken with vegetables. I'm getting so fat you wouldn't recognize me." "Oh, my daughter, you make me so happy." Doña Carmen sighed. "Pray with us tonight." "Yes. We'll ask God to send you a blessing, that someone will finally see the beautiful heart you have. I will, Mom. I love you both. I'll come see you soon, I promise." She hung up the phone and stood there for a moment on the street, her eyes brimming with tears she wouldn't allow herself to shed. 4 hours away, a bus ticket cost what 3 days of medicine did. It had been 4 months since she had hugged her parents. She got on the bus, sat by the window, and let the city pass by like a blur of lights before her eyes. She didn't know it. She had no way of knowing it. But a few kilometers away, in an office of marble and glass, a rich and lonely man was thinking of her, with a stirred heart. And in another office, a beautiful and cruel woman was sharpening her claws to destroy her. Valentina Cruz's fate was about to change forever, and it would all begin with a journey that a young millionaire would take in a few days along a dirt road to a humble house, to a truth that would make him weep. The pantry appeared in Valentina's locker on a Tuesday morning, with a printed note that read, "Congratulations! You have been selected in the monthly Mendoza Corporation Employee Wellness Raffle." Valentina stared at the box overflowing with rice, beans, oil, cans, fruit, powdered milk, and even a bag of candy, afraid to touch it. For a moment she thought it was a mistake, that it belonged to someone else, but her name was clearly written on the label. Her hands trembled. It had been months since she had seen so much food together, let alone owned it. She covered her mouth with her hand, and, for the first time in a long time, let out a tear, not of sadness, but of relief. Tonight, she could send her parents a portion of that blessing. This week, perhaps, she wouldn't have to choose between eating herself or buying her mother's pills. "Thank you, my God," she whispered, hugging the box to her chest. "Thank you." From the security monitor in his office, Mateo Mendoza watched her in silence. And when he saw that tear, that hug of a simple box of food, as if it were the greatest treasure in the world, he felt something break inside him. He, who gave away $50,000 watches without batting an eye, who changed cars every year, who dined on dishes whose prices he never even considered. He had just understood that the purest happiness he had ever seen in his life could fit in a box of rice and beans. He turned off the monitor. He couldn't keep watching. It hurt him, and at the same time, he couldn't stop thinking about her. That afternoon, Rosa entered his office with more information. Mateo had asked for it, unable to contain his curiosity. "Sir, I found out what you asked about Miss Valentina." Rosa sat down in front of the desk, her face serious. "And I must confess, it has left my heart aching." "Tell me everything, Rosa, please." "She's from a very poor town, San Miguel del Valle, 4 hours from here. Her parents are elderly and sick. Her mother has a heart condition. Her father has a leg that never healed properly after an accident working the fields. Valentina is an only child. 3 years ago, she came to the city alone to support them. Everything she earns, she sends back there. Medicine, food, the little they can have. She lives in a rented room in the worst part of town. She barely eats, doesn't buy anything for herself, doesn't go anywhere. Her entire life is working and sending money to her town." Mateo listened, his jaw tight. "And why the tower? Why cleaning floors?" "Because she doesn't have complete studies, sir. She had to leave school to take care of her mother when she got sick. They gave her work here without asking for papers she didn't have. And although they pay her little, she has never missed a day, never been late. She's the first to arrive and the last to leave." Rosa paused. "Is there anything else, sir? Something one of the guards told me." "¿Qué cosa?" "Hace unos meses, Valentina recibió una llamada. Su madre había sufrido una recaída grave y necesitaba una operación urgente. Costaba mucho dinero, dinero que ella no tenía. Esa noche, el vigilante la encontró llorando en las escaleras de servicio, sola, en la oscuridad. Pero al día siguiente, llegó como si nada, con su sonrisa de siempre. Resulta que había pedido un préstamo a un usurero, de esos que cobran intereses criminales. Todavía lo está pagando, por eso trabaja horas extras, por eso no come. Está ahogada en una deuda para salvar la vida de su madre." El silencio cayó pesado sobre la oficina. Mateo se levantó y caminó hacia el ventanal. Apoyó la frente contra el cristal frío. Abajo, la ciudad rugía indiferente. Millones de personas corriendo tras dinero, tras poder, tras cosas. Y entre todas ellas, una muchacha de ojos verdes que solo corría para salvar a quienes amaba. «Rosa», dijo sin voltearse, «¿por qué siento que conozco a esta mujer desde hace 1000 años, cuando apenas hablé con ella una vez?» Rosa sonrió con dulzura. Porque el alma reconoce lo verdadero, Señor. En un mundo lleno de máscaras, usted se topó con una persona auténtica, y eso no se olvida. Mateo se quedó callado un largo rato. Luego, tomó una decisión que lo sorprendió incluso a él mismo. Mañana es sábado. Ella no trabaja, ¿verdad? No, señor. Los sábados los tiene libres. Rosa, cancele todas mis citas del fin de semana, y no le diga a nadie, ¿entendido? ¿Puedo preguntar qué va a hacer, señor? Mateo se volvió hacia ella, y por primera vez en años, había algo en sus ojos que Rosa no había visto nunca. Determinación mezclada con una ternura desconocida. Voy a hacer algo que jamás imaginé que haría. Voy a seguir a una limpiadora hasta su pueblo. Necesito entender, Rosa. Necesito ver con mis propios ojos quién es de verdad Valentina Cruz. Llámelo locura, llámelo como quiera, pero no voy a poder dormir hasta saberlo. Rosa lo miró un largo instante, luego asintió con una sonrisa que escondía esperanza. Tenga cuidado, señor. A veces, cuando uno va buscando la verdad de otra persona, termina encontrando la suya propia. El sábado amaneció gris. Valentina, como cada 15 días cuando lograba ahorrar lo suficiente, había decidido viajar a San Miguel del Valle para ver a sus padres. Llevaba consigo una mochila con parte de la despensa milagrosa, medicinas que había comprado con lo poco ahorrado y el corazón lleno de ansias por abrazar a su madre. Salió de su cuarto a las 5 de la mañana, caminó hasta la central de autobuses y abordó el camión más barato, ese que paraba en cada pueblo y tardaba casi 5 horas en lugar de 4. Se acomodó junto a la ventana, abrazando su mochila, y se quedó dormida casi de inmediato, vencida por el cansancio acumulado de semanas. Lo que no notó, porque jamás lo habría imaginado, fue el auto negro de lujo que arrancó detrás del autobús, manteniéndose a una distancia prudente. Mateo conducía él mismo, sin chofer, sin guardaespaldas, vestido con ropa más sencilla de lo habitual, aunque para sus estándares, seguía siendo elegante. Seguía al destartalado autobús por la carretera, sintiéndose el hombre más absurdo del mundo. Un multimillonario persiguiendo un camión de tercera por una carretera rural. Si sus socios lo vieran, pensarían que había perdido la cabeza. Y tal vez sí la había perdido. A medida que avanzaban, el paisaje fue cambiando. Los rascacielos quedaron atrás, luego las colonias, luego las fábricas, luego los últimos suburbios. La carretera se volvió más angosta, las casas más humildes, el verde más intenso y polvoriento a la vez. Mateo, que conocía Europa, Asia y medio mundo, descubría con asombro un país que vivía a pocas horas de su torre de cristal y que nunca había mirado de verdad. Pasaron campos de maíz reseco, pueblos donde los niños jugaban descalzos en la tierra, mujeres lavando ropa en lavaderos comunitarios, hombres curtidos por el sol cargando leña, una realidad cruda, dura, pero llena de una dignidad que a Mateo le apretaba el pecho. Esta era la gente que limpiaba sus oficinas, que construía sus edificios, que servía en sus hoteles, gente invisible para el mundo en que él había nacido. El autobús se detuvo en varios pueblos. Mateo esperaba a la distancia, fingiendo revisar el motor o consultar el celular cada vez que el camión paraba. 5 horas, 5 largas horas, que le dieron tiempo de pensar en su propia vida vacía, en su prometida, que humillaba a los débiles, en su padre, que solo le había enseñado a multiplicar dinero, pero nunca a sentir, en la soledad inmensa que cargaba detrás de todos sus lujos. Por fin, ya pasado el mediodía, el autobús entró traqueteando a un pueblo pequeño, polvoriento, con una iglesia colonial en el centro y casas de adobe y lámina dispersas por las lomas. Un letrero oxidado y torcido anunciaba San Miguel del Valle. Valentina bajó del camión, estiró el cuerpo entumecido y respiró el aire del campo con una sonrisa que Mateo, oculto en su auto a la distancia, jamás le había visto en la torre. Era una sonrisa diferente, una sonrisa de quien por fin llega a casa. La muchacha echó a caminar por un camino de tierra que se alejaba del centro del pueblo, subiendo por una loma, alejándose de las pocas casas, internándose hacia donde el camino se volvía cada vez más solitario y pobre. Mateo estacionó su auto a prudente distancia y la siguió a pie, manteniéndose lejos, escondiéndose tras los árboles secos y las cercas de piedra. El camino de tierra crujía bajo sus zapatos italianos, ridículamente fuera de lugar en aquel paisaje. El sol castigaba sin piedad, el polvo se le pegaba al traje oscuro, y entonces, al coronar la loma, lo vio. Al final del camino, sola, rodeada de pasto seco, y unas cuantas macetas de barro con flores marchitas, que alguien regaba con esperanza, había una casita, pequeña, vieja, las paredes de adobe descascarado, el techo de lámina oxidada remendado con plásticos, una sola ventana con un vidrio quebrado tapado con cartón, tan humilde que a Mateo se le cortó la respiración. Valentina apuró el paso, casi corriendo los últimos metros. «Mamá, papá, ya llegué», gritó con una alegría que rompía el corazón. La puerta de madera se abrió con un crujido y en el umbral aparecieron dos ancianos. Don Esteban, encorvado, apoyado en un bastón hecho de una rama, con la pierna que nunca sanó. Doña Carmen, delgadísima, frágil como un pajarito, con un rebozo descolorido sobre los hombros y el rostro surcado de arrugas, pero iluminado por la sonrisa más pura del mundo al ver a su hija. «Mi hija, mi niña». Doña Carmen abrió los brazos temblorosos. Valentina se lanzó a abrazarlos a los dos, hundiendo el rostro en el pecho de su madre. Y desde la distancia, escondido tras un árbol seco, Mateo Mendoza vio cómo la muchacha fuerte e inquebrantable, que soportaba humillaciones sin llorar, por fin se permitía ser pequeña, ser hija, ser amada. Y vio algo más, algo que le heló la sangre y le encogió el alma. A través de la puerta abierta de la casita, alcanzó a ver el interior. Una mesa de madera vieja, y sobre ella, todo lo que aquella familia tenía para comer ese día. Media hogaza de pan, unas cuantas papas, y dos platos vacíos esperando ser llenados con algo que no había. Mateo se llevó la mano a la boca. El hombre que lo tenía todo acababa de asomarse al mundo de la mujer que no tenía nada, y no estaba preparado para lo que sus ojos estaban a punto de presenciar. Mateo Mendoza permaneció escondido tras el árbol seco durante varios minutos, incapaz de moverse, incapaz de apartar la mirada de aquella escena que le estaba reescribiendo el alma. Adentro de la casita, con la puerta abierta de par en par por el calor, Valentina sacaba de su mochila los tesoros que había traído: el arroz, los frijoles, las latas, la fruta de la despensa milagrosa y las medicinas que había comprado con sus últimos ahorros. Las colocaba sobre la mesa vieja, una por una, y los ojos de sus padres se iban abriendo de asombro, como si presenciaran un milagro. «Mi hija, ¿de dónde sacaste todo esto?», preguntó doña Carmen con la voz quebrada, tocando una manzana roja como si fuera de oro. «Es demasiado. Te has de haber gastado todo lo tuyo otra vez. ¿Y tú qué vas a comer tu hija?» «No se preocupe por mí, mamá», respondió Valentina con su sonrisa de siempre, esa que escondía tanto. «Me gané un premio en el trabajo, una despensa enorme. Hay comida de sobra para ustedes y para mí. Por una vez, vamos a comer como reyes». Don Esteban, sentado a la mesa con su pierna estirada, tomó una de las cajas de medicina y la observó con ojos llorosos. Eran las pastillas para el corazón de su esposa, las que llevaban días sin poder comprar. «Hija», dijo el viejo con voz ronca, «tu madre lleva una semana racionando las pastillas, tomándose media para que duraran. No te queríamos preocupar». Valentina se quedó congelada. La sonrisa se le borró del rostro. Se giró hacia su madre. «Media pastilla. Mamá, ¿te has estado tomando media pastilla?». La voz se le quebró. «El doctor dijo una entera 2 veces al día. Es tu corazón, mamá. Eso no se juega». «Es que no había dinero, mi hija», murmuró doña Carmen, bajando la mirada avergonzada. «Y no quería pedirte más. Ya haces demasiado por nosotros. Trabajas tanto allá, tan lejos, tan sola». Y entonces ocurrió. La muchacha que jamás lloraba frente a los crueles, la que soportaba humillaciones con la cabeza en alto, la que aguantaba el hambre con una sonrisa, se quebró por dentro, pero no dejó que sus padres lo vieran. Se dio la vuelta con el pretexto de acomodar las cosas, y mientras lo hacía, 2 lágrimas silenciosas rodaron por sus mejillas y cayeron sobre la mesa de madera. Afuera, Mateo lo vio todo. Vio los hombros de Valentina temblar en silencio. Vio el esfuerzo titánico de aquella mujer por no derrumbarse delante de sus padres. Vio el amor más puro, más sacrificado, más inmenso que había presenciado en toda su vida. Y el hombre que lo tenía todo, el millonario que jamás lloraba, sintió que algo se le rompía en el pecho. Una primera lágrima rodó por su rostro, luego otra y otra más. Se llevó la mano a la boca para ahogar el sollozo, recargado contra el árbol seco, llorando como no había llorado desde que era un niño. Lloraba por ella, por su sacrificio, por la injusticia de un mundo donde una mujer con semejante corazón tenía que romperse las manos limpiando pisos y morirse de hambre, mientras él desperdiciaba fortunas en cosas que no le daban ni una pizca de la felicidad que Valentina encontraba en una simple manzana roja. Lloraba también de vergüenza, vergüenza por todas las veces que había pasado de largo junto a la gente humilde sin verla, vergüenza por el mundo de lujo y frialdad en el que había vivido encerrado, vergüenza por su prometida, que humillaba a esta mujer extraordinaria llamándola basura. Tan absorto estaba en su llanto que no escuchó los pasos. No se dio cuenta de que doña Carmen, al salir a tender un trapo en la cuerda de afuera, lo había visto, un hombre extraño, vestido elegante, llorando solo detrás del árbol frente a su casa. «Joven», la voz frágil de la anciana lo sobresaltó. «¿Se encuentra usted bien? ¿Está perdido?» Mateo se limpió las lágrimas a toda prisa, atrapado, sin saber qué decir. «Disculpe, señora», balbuceó. «Mi auto se descompuso allá abajo, cerca del pueblo. Estaba buscando ayuda y me perdí». Doña Carmen lo miró con esos ojos cansados, pero llenos de una sabiduría antigua. No le creyó del todo, pero su corazón, ese corazón enfermo que se racionaba las pastillas, no conocía el rencor ni la desconfianza. «Pues no se quede ahí al rayo del sol que lo va a tumbar», dijo con dulzura. «Pásele a la casa. Le damos un vaso de agua fresca y descansa un poco. Mi esposo sabe algo de motores, capaz que le puede echar la mano». «No, señora, no quiero molestar, de verdad». «No es molestia, joven. Aquí en el campo no dejamos a nadie tirado». «Ándele, pásele». Y Mateo Mendoza, el heredero del imperio más grande de la región, el hombre que había cenado con embajadores, se encontró siguiendo a una anciana pobre hacia el interior de una casa de adobe, con el corazón en la garganta y los ojos todavía húmedos. When she entered, Valentina, who had her back turned as she put away medicine, turned around at the sound of unfamiliar footsteps. Upon seeing who it was, the plate in her hands slipped and shattered on the dirt floor. «Sir, Mendoza!» Her face drained of all color. What are you doing here?» The heir turned to stone. Don Esteban looked at his daughter, then at the elegant, confused stranger. Doña Carmen frowned, beginning to piece things together. «Do you know him, my daughter?» her mother asked. Valentina didn't know what to say. Shame consumed her alive. Her boss? The most powerful man she knew seeing this. The dilapidated house, the nearly empty table, the raw, unmasked poverty of her family. She wished the earth would swallow her whole. He's my boss, Mama, the owner of the company where I work. She lowered her head, her cheeks burning. Sir, I apologize for all of this. She trailed off, unable to finish. And then Mateo did something none of them expected. He walked slowly until he stood before Valentina. Instead of looking at her with the pity or disdain she feared, he gazed at her with a profound, almost reverent respect, his eyes still red from crying. Valentina, he said, his voice thick with emotion, you have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. He turned to the elders, and to everyone's astonishment, gave a slight bow. Don Esteban, Doña Carmen, it is an honor to meet you. You have the most extraordinary daughter I have ever known. The silence was absolute. Only the wind rustling the dry grass outside could be heard. Your daughter, Mateo continued, his voice cracking, is the bravest, most generous, and most dignified person I have ever seen. I have had all the money in the world since birth, and I have never, ever seen a heart like hers. She breaks herself for you, and she does it with a smile. Valentina watched him, uncomprehending, tears threatening to spill. Sir, please, don't say that. I only saw her, he interrupted her gently. I saw her share her only piece of bread with a dove. I saw her donate all her money to save Don Joaquin. I saw her hold onto walls from hunger and still smile at the world. She paused, holding back tears. And today, I saw her cry with her back turned so her parents wouldn't see her suffer. Forgive me for following you. I know I had no right, but I needed to understand who you truly were, and now I do. Doña Carmen brought a trembling hand to her chest. Don Esteban's eyes were filled with tears, and for the first time in years, Valentina felt seen, truly seen. "I don't know what to say, sir," she murmured. "Say nothing." Mateo smiled through his tears. "Just allow me to share this table with you today as an equal, without masters or employees, just people." And so, in that humble adobe house with its peeling paint, under a patched tin roof, the most powerful millionaire in the region sat at an old wooden table with two poor elders and a green-eyed cleaner, to share bread, potatoes, and a few cans, as if it were the most exquisite banquet in the world. And for Mateo, it was. It was the day he unknowingly stopped being a rich man and began to become a complete man. But the happiness of that day would come at a price, because hundreds of kilometers away, in a glass office, Adriana Velez had just received the report from the investigator she had hired, and in her hands, she now held all of Valentina's weaknesses, all that hurt her, all that she loved. "Sick parents in a lost town," Adriana murmured with a cruel smile, reading the document. "A debt with a loan shark, a heart that's too good." She slammed the folder shut. "Perfect, servant. I know exactly how I'm going to destroy you." The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over San Miguel del Valle as Mateo and Valentina walked along the path bordering the hill where Esteban and Doña Carmen rested, exhausted by the day's emotions, but happier than they had been in a long time. They walked in silence for a long while, the dry grass crunching under their steps, the sky bleeding into orange and pink. Mateo, who in the city measured every word like a contract, here didn't know how to begin. It was Valentina who finally broke the silence. "You must think I'm a liar, sir," she said, looking at the horizon. "So many times I told my mother I ate well, that I was fat, that the company took care of me, and you saw that it was all a lie." "It's not a lie," Mateo replied softly. "It's love. You lied to protect her. That's not deceit, Valentina. It's the purest form of caring for someone." She looked at him, surprised that a man like him understood something like that. "Why do you care so much, sir?" she asked, stopping. "I'm just the woman who cleans your floors. You have a huge company, a beautiful fiancé, a perfect life. Why did you travel 5 hours to follow a cleaner?" Mateo stopped too, looked at her for a long time, and for the first time in his life, decided to be completely honest. "Because ever since I saw you endure that humiliation without breaking, I haven't been able to get you out of my head," he confessed. "Because in a world where everyone around me pretends, lies, and calculates, you are the only true thing I have found." "And why?" she hesitated. "Because my life is not half as perfect as it seems, Valentina. I have money, yes, but I am alone. More alone than you can imagine." Valentina listened without saying anything. Then, almost without thinking, she began to speak as if his honesty had opened a door that had been locked for years. "I wasn't always poor, sir," she said in a low voice. "My family owned land. We weren't rich, but we had enough. My father grew corn and beans, and the harvest gave us enough to live with dignity. I went to school, I had dreams, I wanted to study to be a teacher." Mateo listened with all his soul. But 5 years ago, a man came to town, an investor from the city, well-dressed, with sweet words. Valentina's voice hardened. He convinced several farmers, including my father, to invest in an agricultural project. He said he was going to multiply their land, that they were going to become prosperous. My father, who trusted people, signed papers he didn't fully understand. He put our land as collateral. "A fraud," Mateo murmured, who knew those schemes all too well. "A fraud," she confirmed, her eyes moist. "The man disappeared with everyone's money, and it turned out the papers my father signed left him in debt up to his neck. We lost the land, we lost the big house. We were left only with my grandmother's old little house, the one you saw today. And shortly after the shock, my mother had her first heart attack, and my father, working from sunup to sundown to recover something, injured his leg and never walked well again." Her voice broke. Mateo felt a deep rage grow in his chest. "That's why I left school," Valentina continued. "That's why I came to the city. Someone had to support my family, and that was me. I promised my mother that I would never let them fall, and here I am, fulfilling it. Even if it costs me my health, my sleep, my hunger, even if I am humiliated, as long as they breathe, I will fight." Mateo fell silent, deeply moved. Then he asked cautiously, "Valentina, do you remember the name of that man? The one who scammed you?" She nodded slowly, bitterly. I will never forget it. His name was Hugo Velez. Mateo felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Velez. The surname hit his chest like a hammer. It couldn't be. It had to be a coincidence. There were many Velez in the country. But something, an icy intuition, told him it wasn't a coincidence. Are you sure of the surname? He asked, trying to hide his shock. Completely. Hugo Velez, a city man, elegant, in his 50s. He had a daughter. I remember because he once mentioned her with pride. He said she was his treasure, that he would make her a queen. Valentina shook her head. I would give anything to see him pay for what he did to us. But people like that never pay. They hide behind their money and continue to destroy lives. Mateo was speechless. Hugo Velez, Adriana's father, a minority partner in his company, the man whose daughter he planned to marry, the same man who had destroyed Valentina's family. A wave of nausea rose in his throat. Everything made a terrible sense. The Velez fortune, their entry into the Mendoza circle, their sudden luxury a few years ago. How many families like Valentina's had been ruined to build that wealth? Sir, are you feeling well? Valentina looked at him, worried. He had turned pale. Yes, Mateo swallowed. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. He needed to be sure. He needed proof. It's just that I am deeply outraged by what they did to you. I promise you, Valentina, that people who destroy lives like that eventually face justice. I promise you. She smiled sadly, not entirely believing him. She had heard for years that justice would come, and it never had. They returned to the house as the first stars began to appear. Mateo bid farewell to the elders with genuine warmth, promising to return. Doña Carmen took his hands as she said goodbye. Young man, the old woman said, looking him in the eyes with her characteristic wisdom. I don't know what truly brought you here, but something tells me heaven sent you. Take care of my daughter. She is the only good thing I have left in this world. She has a heart that deserves no more suffering. Mateo felt a lump in his throat. I give you my word, Doña Carmen. I will take care of her, and I will make sure that the justice they deserve finally reaches this house. On the road back to the city, driving alone in the dark, Mateo couldn't stop thinking. Rage, tenderness, determination mingled in his chest. He picked up his phone and called his trusted lawyer, Licenciado Ramirez, waking him up at midnight. Ramirez, I need you to investigate something with the utmost discretion. Everything about Hugo Velez, his businesses from 5 years ago, specifically an agricultural fraud in the San Miguel del Valle region, swindled families, foreclosed land. I want names, dates, documents, everything. Hugo Velez, sir, the lawyer's voice sounded alarmed. Your fiancé's father. The same. And Ramirez? Let no one know. Not my father, not the Velez, no one. Understood? Understood, sir? Although I can ask what is happening. Mateo looked at the dark road stretching before him, the city lights barely appearing on the horizon. What's happening is that I've discovered who I really am, Ramirez, he replied, and that for too long, I've been on the wrong side of history. That ends today. He hung up, and as he drove toward his world of crystal and marble, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. What he didn't know was that while he was uncovering the truth, Adriana Velez had already set her plan in motion, a plan designed to destroy Valentina in the cruelest way possible, and the first moves of that war were about to begin. The following days were the strangest and sweetest of Valentina's life. Mateo had changed. He was no longer the distant boss from the 30th floor. He would find any excuse to come down and find her, bring her coffee on cold mornings, and stay talking to her in the hallways as if time didn't exist. He asked about her parents, about her town, about her forgotten dreams of becoming a teacher. And Valentina, whose heart had been armored for years, felt that armor slowly begin to crack. She didn't allow herself to hope. She was a cleaner. He, an engaged millionaire, but her traitorous heart beat faster every time she saw him appear at the end of the hallway. What neither of them knew was that each of these encounters was being watched. Adriana Velez had a mole watching her back, and the photographs of Mateo, laughing with the cleaning lady, bringing her coffee, looking at her tenderly, burned in her hands like embers. So it's true, Adriana hissed in her father's office, tossing the photos onto the desk. My fiancé slobbering over some starving nobody. A servant, Dad. He's humiliating me in front of everyone. Hugo Velez, a man with silver hair and eyes as cold as steel, examined the photographs without flinching. It was the same face, 50 years older, that had destroyed the Cruz family. "Calm down, daughter," he said in a smooth voice. "Men have their whims. This is nothing, a passing distraction with a little employee. When he marries you, he'll forget her." "No, Dad, this isn't a whim." Adriana slammed her hand on the desk. "I know him. Mateo has never looked at anyone like that. If we don't act, that nobody will take everything from me. The wedding, the Mendoza Empire, everything you and I have worked for. I won't allow it." Hugo laced his fingers together thoughtfully. The merger of Velez and Mendoza companies, sealed with that wedding, was the deal of his life. He couldn't let a cleaning lady ruin it. "What do you have in mind?" Adriana smiled, and it was a smile that chilled the blood. "We have to get rid of her, but not just fire her. That's not enough. We have to destroy her. We have to make Mateo see her as a criminal, a thief, a piece of trash unworthy of his pity. We have to tarnish her so badly that even he can't defend her." And so, the machinery of evil was set in motion. 3 days later, on an ordinary morning, the tranquility of Mendoza Tower shattered. Valentina was cleaning the executive offices on the 28th floor when 2 security guards intercepted her. "Miss Cruz, please come with us. Management's orders." "What's happening? Did I do something wrong?" she asked, her heart pounding. They didn't answer. They led her to a boardroom where the head of HR, the head of security, Adriana Velez, with a poorly disguised smirk of satisfaction, and Hugo Velez, with his stony expression, were already waiting. On the table, inside a clear plastic bag, lay a gold watch and a wad of bills. "Miss Cruz," said the head of security sternly, "this morning the theft of a gold watch valued at 80,000 pesos and a considerable sum of cash from Mr. Velez's office was reported. The hallway cameras place you as the only cleaning staff who had access to that office this morning." Valentina felt the world crashing down on her. "What? No, I didn't steal anything. I would never take anything that isn't mine." Her voice trembled with indignation and fear. "I just came in to mop, like every day." "That's what they all say," Adriana intervened, her voice sweet and venomous. "But look, we found this." She pointed to the bag in her locker. "The watch and the money hidden among your things." "That's a lie." Valentina stood up abruptly. "Someone put it there. I've never opened Mr. Velez's office for anything other than cleaning. Please, believe me." "The evidence speaks for itself, miss," said Hugo Velez with calculated coldness. "We have the recordings. We have the items in your locker. This is a serious crime. We could send you straight to jail." The word jail fell like a death sentence. Valentina thought of her parents. If she went to prison, who would take care of them? Who would buy her mother's medicine? They would die alone, abandoned. Terror chilled her blood. "Please," she begged, and the tears she had been fighting so hard to hold back finally streamed down her face. "Please, don't do this to me. I didn't steal anything. I have sick parents. They depend on me. I'm all they have. I swear to you on my mother's life, it wasn't me." Adriana savored each tear like a delicacy. "How pathetic," she murmured, low enough for only Valentina to hear. "I warned you, servant. I told you to enjoy your little moment of glory. Did you think you could take what's mine?" No one stands between Adriana Velez and what she wants. No one. In that instant, Valentina understood everything. She understood who had orchestrated this infamy and why, but understanding it did her no good. She had no proof, no power, no voice. She was just a poor cleaning lady against the Velez name. "To avoid scandal and out of consideration for your circumstances," Hugo said with a sickeningly feigned magnanimity, "we will not press criminal charges, but you are terminated immediately, without severance, and with this in your record. Let this be a lesson to you. Guards, escort her out. Have her return her uniform." And so, under Adriana's triumphant gaze, Valentina was led through the halls of Mendoza Tower like a criminal, in front of the eyes of dozens of colleagues who murmured, who pointed, who believed the lies. The same girl who had donated her bonus to save Don Joaquin. The same one who shared her bread with the pigeons. Humiliated again, destroyed, forever branded as a thief. They took her uniform, returned her old backpack, and pushed her out into the street under the rain that had begun to fall, as if the sky itself wept for the injustice. Valentina walked aimlessly under the downpour, drenched, shivering, her soul in pieces. For the first time in years, she felt like she was breaking completely, that she couldn't take it anymore. The debt to the loan shark, her sick parents, now without a job, branded as a criminal, with no possibility of finding employment anywhere with that stain on her name, she took refuge under the awning of a closed shop, And there, alone, drenched, she finally allowed herself to break down. She cried like she had never cried before. She cried for her mother, who rationed pills, for her father, who could no longer walk, for her broken dreams of becoming a teacher, for the injustice of a world where the powerful trampled the humble without consequence. "Why, my God," she cried to the gray sky, "what did I do to deserve this? I only wanted to take care of my family. I only wanted to be good. Why are you punishing me like this?" And as Valentina hit rock bottom under the rain in the deepest darkness of her despair, she didn't know that fate was already moving its pieces, because Mateo Mendoza had just returned from a business trip. Upon arriving at the tower and learning that his Valentina had been accused of theft and thrown out into the street like a dog, he felt a fury he had never experienced in his life. "What did you do? What?" he roared in the lobby with a voice that made the glass tremble. "Who gave that order? Who?" Rosa, with tears in her eyes, ran to him. "Sir, it was a trap. I know it. We all know it. That girl would never steal. It was the Velez, sir. Miss Adriana and her father destroyed her and threw her out into the rain." Mateo's eyes blazed with a cold, deadly fire, and at that very moment, his phone rang. It was Mr. Ramirez. "Mr. Mendoza," the lawyer said, his voice tense. "I have everything you asked for about Hugo Velez, and believe me, it's much worse than we imagined. I have proof of the fraud, I have the names of the ruined families, and I have something else, sir, something that will change everything." Mateo squeezed the phone until his knuckles turned white. "Tell me, where is Ramirez? I'm going there right now. It's time the Velez paid for everything, down to the last peso, down to the last tear." Outside, the rain intensified, but the real storm was just about to begin. Mateo found Valentina 2 hours later, thanks to Rosa, who remembered the area where she rented her room. He found her in front of the dilapidated building, soaked to the bone, shivering from cold and tears, sitting on the doorstep with her backpack clutched to her chest. "Valentina." Mateo got out of the car in the rain, not caring about the expensive suit clinging to his body, and ran to her. "My God, she's freezing. Come with me." She looked up, her eyes swollen and red. "Sir, please leave," she murmured, her voice broken. "I've already done enough damage. If they see you with me, they'll implicate you. They say I'm a thief. Better stay away from me. Listen to me carefully." Mateo knelt in front of her in the dirty street water, taking her icy hands in his. "I know you didn't steal anything. I know it with every fiber of my being. This was a trap by Adriana and her father. And I swear to you, Valentina, I swear on my life that I will clear your name, and they will pay for everything they did to you. But now I need you to trust me, please." Valentina looked into his eyes, and in that gaze, drenched in rain and tears, she found something she hadn't felt in years. Someone who defended her, someone who believed in her without asking for proof. She nodded, trembling, and let him guide her to the car. Mateo took her to a clean and safe hotel, ordered dry clothes and hot food, and made sure she rested. He didn't touch her, he didn't demand anything, he just cared for her. Before leaving, he took her hand. "Tomorrow everything will change, Valentina. I promise. Rest. For the first time in a long time, you are not alone." That night, Mateo didn't sleep. He met with Mr. Ramirez and reviewed, page by page, every document in the file the lawyer had compiled. And what he found confirmed his worst suspicions and revealed something even bigger. Hugo Velez had not only defrauded the Cruz family, he had orchestrated a massive fraud, dispossessing dozens of peasant families of their land throughout the San Miguel del Valle region, using forged documents and straw men. With that stolen money, he had built his fortune and bought his way into the Mendoza world. Every peso of Adriana's luxury was stained with the tears of the poor her father had ruined. But there was more. Among the documents, Ramirez had found proof that Hugo was still operating frauds, now within the Mendoza Corporation itself, diverting funds to phantom accounts. He was stealing from Mateo's family as well. "We have him, sir," said Ramirez. With this, Hugo Velez goes straight to prison, and the accusation against Miss Valentina falls on its own. I have the complete recording of the hallway camera, the real one, not the edited version they showed. It clearly shows a security guard paid by Adriana entering Valentina's locker and planting the watch and money. It's all recorded. Mateo closed the folder. His eyes burned with icy determination. "Convene everyone for tomorrow at noon. The board of directors, my father, the Velez, the entire company, if necessary. And bring Valentina. It's time for the truth to come to light in front of everyone. The following noon, the grand boardroom of Mendoza Tower was packed. The board of directors, the executives, Mateo's father, Don Augusto Mendoza, a stern man of 70, and, of course, Hugo and Adriana Velez, who smiled confidently, believing they would witness the signing of the marriage commitment that would seal the merger. Mateo entered with a firm step, and beside him, to everyone's astonishment, walked Valentina Cruz, dressed simply, but with her head held high, no longer a humiliated cleaner, but a woman regaining her dignity. "What does this mean?" Adriana exclaimed, paling. "Why is that thief here? We fired her yesterday." "Sit down, Adriana," Mateo said with terrifying calm, "and listen carefully, because today, in this room, all the lies will come crashing down." Don Augusto frowned. "Mateo, what is happening? This is very irregular. Father, what's happening is that for years, we allowed a criminal to sit at our table." Mateo turned on the room screen. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the real security recording from the day Miss Cruz was accused of theft." The video played, and to the horror of the entire room, it was seen with absolute clarity how a security guard opened Valentina's locker and placed the gold watch and wad of bills inside. The date and time displayed on the screen left no room for doubt. "That's been tampered with," Adriana shrieked, springing to her feet. "It's a staged setup." Mateo smiled coldly. "The guard you see there already confessed this morning before a notary. He stated that you, Adriana Velez, paid him 50,000 pesos to frame an innocent woman. I have his signed statement. I have the bank transfer you made to him." A wave of scandal rippled through the room. Adriana collapsed back into her chair, as white as a sheet. "But that, ladies and gentlemen," Mateo continued, changing the image on the screen, "is merely the beginning. Because the true criminal in this story isn't a poor cleaner. It's the Velez family." Hugo Velez stood up, trying to regain control. "This is defamation. I won't allow you to tarnish my family's name, Mateo. Your father and I are partners." "Sit down, Mr. Velez," Mateo said, his voice like steel. "Or the police, who are already on their way, will make you sit." Hugo froze. 5 years ago," Mateo proceeded, addressing the entire room, "this man arrived in a town called San Miguel del Valle. With sweet words and fake documents, he defrauded dozens of peasant families, stripping them of their land, their homes, their future. He ruined them all. One of those families was the Cruz family." He glanced at Valentina. Valentina's father lost everything. Her mother fell ill from heartbreak. "And this woman you called a thief and threw out into the rain, had to drop out of her studies and come clean floors to save her parents from starving? And do you know who destroyed her life?" He pointed at Hugo. "He, Hugo Velez, the very same man who accused her of theft yesterday." Valentina, listening with tears streaming down her face, looked at Hugo Velez and finally recognized him completely. The man who had ruined her family, the monster of her nightmares, sitting there, finally exposed. "You," Valentina whispered, rising. "You were the one who took everything from us, who made my mother sick, who stole my father's smile, and you didn't even recognize me when you humiliated me. To you, we weren't people. We were just a number on your list of victims." Hugo Velez couldn't meet her gaze. "And that's not all, Father," Mateo said, turning to Don Augusto. "I have proof that Hugo has been siphoning funds from our company to ghost accounts for 2 years. He's been stealing from us too. Here are the documents." Don Augusto took the papers with hands trembling with rage, reviewed them, and his severe face contorted into a mask of fury. "Damn you," the old man Mendoza muttered. "I trusted you. I opened the doors of my home, of my company to you, and you betrayed us. Guards, no one leaves this room." At that moment, the doors opened, and several police officers entered, along with Licenciado Ramirez. "Hugo Velez," the commanding officer announced, "you are under arrest for fraud, document forgery, embezzlement, and bribery." "Adriana Velez, you are under arrest for bribery and slander." "No, let me go! You don't know who I am!" Hugo yelled as he was handcuffed. Adriana, distraught, turned to Mateo, her face a mess. "Mateo, please! We were going to get married. All this for a servant. You prefer her over me?" Mateo looked at her with a serene contempt. "You never knew the value of a person, Adriana. You traded people for money. And that woman you called trash has more nobility in one finger than you and your father combined. Yes, Adriana, I prefer her. 1,000 times her. Now pay for what you've done." As the Velez family was led away in handcuffs amidst the murmurs of the entire company, Valentina stood trembling, unable to believe that after 5 years of injustice, truth had finally triumphed. Matteo approached her, and in front of the entire board of directors, in front of his father, in front of everyone, he took her hand. "It's over, Valentina," he said softly. "Your name is cleared, your family will have justice, and no one will ever humiliate you again." Valentina's tears this time were of liberation. 5 years of pain were finally beginning to dissolve. But the story wasn't over yet, because the most important part was yet to come. It was the beginning of a new life. The months that followed transformed Valentina Cruz's life like a miracle she had never dared to dream of. Hugo Velez was sentenced to 15 years in prison for all his crimes. Justice, the justice Valentina believed would never arrive, finally knocked on her door, and it didn't come alone. Thanks to the evidence gathered by Licenciado Ramirez, a judge ordered the restitution of stolen assets to all the defrauded families of San Miguel del Valle. The lands returned to their owners, the houses too, and after 5 years, the Cruz family recovered what the fraud had taken from them. Adriana, for her part, received a lighter sentence, but one sufficient to teach her that no amount of money in the world could place her above the law. She was released from prison some time later, alone, without fortune, without a name to back her, finally discovering what it felt like to be a nobody. The wheel of life had turned, but Matteo wasn't content with legal justice. He wanted to go further. The first thing he did was take Don Esteban and Doña Carmen to the best doctors in the city. Doña Carmen's heart was treated by specialists. She received the operation they couldn't afford years ago, which had forced her to ration pills. Don Esteban's leg was operated on by an expert surgeon, and although he would never run again, he walked with dignity, without the makeshift cane, supported by a slender wooden cane Matteo gifted him. "Young man," Don Esteban said, his eyes welling with tears, "the day you took your first steps without pain, you gave us back more than health. You gave us back hope. May God bless you 1,000 times." Valentina, meanwhile, recovered her dream. Matteo ensured she could finish her studies. She returned to the classroom, now an adult woman, and at night she studied to finally become the teacher she had always wanted to be. Matteo never gave her money out of charity. He gave her opportunities, and she, with her usual effort, turned them into achievements. But amidst all that rebirth, something was growing in silence, day after day, gaze after gaze. Something that neither Valentina nor Matteo dared to name, but which burned in both their chests. It was a Sunday afternoon in San Miguel del Valle when it finally happened. They had gone to visit Valentina's parents. The sun was setting in a golden glow over the fields, now verdant again, replanted with corn. Matteo and Valentina walked along the same path where, months before, she had told him her story. But now everything was different. Now they walked as two people who had found each other against all odds. "Valentina," Matteo said, stopping, "I have something to confess, something I've kept quiet for months out of fear." "Fear?" she smiled. "The great Matteo Mendoza, afraid?" "Terrified," he admitted, laughing nervously, "because I've never felt what I feel for you in my life. I had everything, Valentina. Money, luxury, power, and I was empty until I met you. You, who had nothing, taught me what truly matters. You taught me to be human, to feel, to love." He took her hands. "And I love you. I love you with all that I am, not as an employer, not out of pity. I love you as a man, as the man you taught me to be." Valentina felt her heart overflow. Tears, this time of pure happiness, rolled down her cheeks. "Matteo," her voice trembled, "I'm just a village girl. I used to clean your floors. How could a woman like me be with a man like you?" "No, Valentina." Matteo tenderly wiped away her tears. "It's the other way around. How could a man like me deserve a woman like you? You are true wealth. You are the treasure I've been searching for my whole life without knowing it, and if you permit me, I want to spend the rest of my days trying to be worthy of your heart." And then, in front of the golden field, in front of the humble little house that had seen him cry months before, Matteo Mendoza knelt. He pulled out a simple ring, not the most expensive, but the one he knew she would love, with a small emerald the exact color of her eyes. "Valentina Cruz, will you marry me?" Valentina covered her mouth with trembling hands, and from the doorway of the little house, Doña Esteban and Doña Carmen, who had come out to watch, embraced each other with tears in their eyes. "Yes," Valentina whispered, and then she shouted it to the sky, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Matteo, I will." He lifted her in his arms and spun her around under the sun-drenched field, as the elders applauded and the wind rustled the corn as if the entire earth were celebrating. The wedding was held months later, not in a luxurious city ballroom or a five-star hotel, but in San Miguel del Valle, in front of the humble adobe house, which had now been lovingly restored but retained its essence, because Valentina didn't want to forget where she came from. The entire town was invited. The families whom Hugo Velez had ruined and who had now recovered their lands came with flowers, with music, with food. Don Joaquin, the watchman whose life Valentina had saved with her donated bonus, now recovered from his lung condition, wept with joy seeing her in her wedding dress. Rosa, the loyal assistant, was the godmother, and even Don Augusto Mendoza, Mateo's stern father, attended. And seeing that humble girl who had transformed his son into a good man, he hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Welcome to the family, daughter. Thank you for giving me my Mateo back." Valentina walked towards the makeshift altar under an arch of wildflowers, escorted by her father, Don Esteban, who now walked tall and proud. Her mother, Doña Carmen, with a healthy and strong heart, wept with happiness in the front row. And Mateo, waiting for her at the end of the aisle with shining eyes, knew that this was the happiest day of his entire existence. "Do you remember the first time you came here?" Valentina whispered when she reached his side, crying behind a tree. "How could I forget?" he replied, smiling. "It was the day I stopped being rich and started being happy." They married under the open sky of the countryside, with the golden sun setting over the cornfields, surrounded not by luxury, but by true love. And when the priest declared them husband and wife, the entire village erupted in cheers and applause. Time passed, and happiness bloomed in that family like corn in the restored fields. A year later, Valentina and Mateo's first daughter was born, a girl with eyes as green as her mother's, whom they named Esperanza, because that was what the humble cleaner had brought into the solitary millionaire's life: hope. Doña Carmen and Don Esteban lived many more years, healthy and surrounded by affection, watching their granddaughter grow, recounting over and over the story of the young millionaire who one day climbed a dirt road and fell in love with their daughter's heart. And Valentina, who had arrived in the city with nothing more than a promise and an old backpack, fulfilled all her dreams. She became a teacher in the village school, teaching the humble children that origin does not determine destiny, that dignity cannot be bought or sold, and that a good heart, no matter how trampled, always ends up winning. Because in the end, true wealth was never in Mateo's bank accounts, nor in the mansions, nor in the luxury cars. True wealth was always in that humble, peeling adobe house, at a table with bread and potatoes shared with love, in a daughter who gave her all for her parents, and in a man who had the humility to recognize that what he had been searching for his whole life was in the simplest of places. And so, the humiliated cleaner became the heart of the Mendoza family, not by marrying a millionaire, but because her heart had always been worth more than all the gold in the world. Finn. If this story has touched your heart, share it, because in a world full of Adrias, it will always be necessary to remember that kindness, sooner or later, receives its reward, and that true love doesn't look at uniforms or bank accounts, it looks at the soul. M.